Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending the Harrington Group International webinar on production part approval process, or PPAP, what software does and does not work and why. And what I want to do is share the lessons I've learned over the last couple of years working with suppliers and companies that have been using spreadsheets for document authoring. And when I use the term document authoring, very specific into process or DFEMA, process flow, process FEMA, control plan, gauge studies, and the like. We do have a great attendance today from a couple different countries, and for the people in crazy time zones, thank you. The phones are muted, but we would like to take questions at the end, so please type those in the question block. A copy of the presentation can be downloaded during this event, and a certificate of attendance will be provided. The intended audience for this is based on you already know what PPAP is. So it's for people planning or currently trying to implement PPAP. For those of you, and just for looking at the company names, PPAP has been in your purchase orders for a long time from your customers. Some are just coming, but it is a must-do process. And when you're trying to do PPAP with emails and spreadsheets or another big system that a lot of people describe to me as annoying, cumbersome, and you want to go back to spreadsheets. So it's going to discuss the common issues and challenges that companies are facing, why they're facing them, some ideas how to solve them from both the customers and the supplier's view. Because of the number of people on today's call from aerospace, I did add this slide. Because we also, well, it's not just aerospace. It can be any company where we said, we already do inspection of first piece. We already do maybe 100% inspection. And it gets frustrating. Why do we have to do this PPAP? Well, inspection, of course, is not 100% effective. First article inspection reports basically just prove that you did one part well. And whether you have high volume or low volume, it's still the same subject. And even if you're making one part, the owners I talk to, is just saying, how do you consistently make product? And it's when you explain it to owners and executives in such a way where you say, hey, all we want to know, or this is the process you follow. These are the risks that we know about that are present, and this is how we control the risks. I mean, those are just basic questions that most manufacturing people can explain pretty well. It'd be really helpful if we got more manufacturing engineers working with quality engineers who are trying to do this. And then there's one more part, and that's those gauge studies. And, the idea behind the gauge study is I want to make sure that I'm capable of only accepting good parts and only rejecting bad parts. The opposite of that is very counterproductive, accepting bad parts and rejecting good parts. The biggest thing I've learned throughout all these conversations over the last few years, and again, most of this I'm sharing with you is coming from customers that have been, and suppliers I've been working with. Baby steps. Small, reasonable goals, one day at a time, one step at a time, something that is doable. And the reason I say that is a lot of the frustration I hear comes from the large, big bang projects, and they fail. It takes too long to get the ROI. It takes more time and more money. And in some of the companies, by the time the project is done, the person that started is gone. It might be 2 or 3 people around the project. So they're difficult. And a lot of times the roles are not understood and the decision making is confused. So forget the titles. Just think about the people that do oversight of the PPAP process that are just looking for reports and metrics. The people that manage the PPAP process, which are essentially project managers, and then the people that execute it, the people that actually do the document authoring, the people that actually are wrestling with these spreadsheets. Another way to think of this is kind of like an agile supplier PPAP deployment, just again, baby steps. For those of you who've been involved in using spreadsheets and PPAP, it's not a very lean process. And not to go into all the areas for lean, but defects. The PPAP gets rejected because it didn't meet the customer X. Bad news. It's extremely costly, but it also attracts unwanted attention from your customers. Overproduction. You may be working on a PPAP that's not needed anymore, and believe me, it happens. So, and again, there's a lot of things about the reason this slide's in here is if there's anybody in your company that is a lean advocate, show them how you currently do it now and get their help to move forward. What do you mean help to move forward? The why bother? If you do it correctly, you can get a knowledge base from PPAP and dramatically shorten the time to improve the results and minimize the risk. We've seen PPAP creation times down by 60%. I had one client that using the capability of developing product and process families that are reusable in a PPAP tool, got their reduced their creation time to like 90%. PPAP reporting and submission time is faster. And the most important part of this is why are we doing all this anyhow? Well, we want to make sure that we get zero defects, that we move forward, with improvement. And a lot of times executives don't see that. Well, I shouldn't just say executives. The people doing the work don't see it. But again, if you get better at it, the effectiveness is 80, 90%. So what does work and not work, and why do we make bad decisions? Well, here's the major point. Without understanding what your people need, how the process works, the software will fail. So people, process, and software is the hierarchy. A lot of people just buy software and kind of throw it at the people, not even understand the processing. And, I hear way too often, we bought this and it didn't work. When I respond to them, I said, well, what did not work and for whom? So let's look at the requirements in the user roles. Well, I did add a slide in here. I saw this in the airport last week, build features that sales thinks customer needs. And when I saw that, I thought of this conversation. And instead of buying software executive thinks the users need, we need to buy software that the users actually need. So why do we make bad decisions? I've seen some really crazy requirements document. As a minimum, they need to be complete and realistic, and you need to understand needs versus wants. And the biggest part of this is don't let perfection get in the way of continuous improvement. Again, baby steps. We can't use it because, all the excuses. And when I end these conversations, they want these really complicated, highly engineered, IT rule restricted functionality. And I go, well, hold on a minute. Remember, we're just replacing standalone non-integrated spreadsheets. Take a baby step. So, if the oversee people, the people are just trying to look at it. Sometimes they say I'm not hearing anything, so it must be okay. The project managers, most of the tools that people are frustrated with are just project management tools. And that seems to be working fine. Here's a task, 18, 22 steps. We got to process them and assign them. It's like, oh, okay. But the heart of this conversation is really about the people that have to execute. The people that are documenting this stuff in spreadsheets is a real time-consuming mess. So, I worked with a group that every time I sat down, they said, John, if it's too complicated, I'm going back to spreadsheets. This is the voice of the customer that's saying, don't complicate it. I have other ones that have said, I'm not trying to have the software do my job. I just want it to make my job easier. And that was in the context of, well, it automatically does this. Well, it automatically do this. And a lot of people say, don't automatically do anything. Let a human decide. Let me decide. And these are things about, we need sophisticated workflows. And they said, look, I'm just trying to get out of a spreadsheet mess. And then I've heard people say, well, the PLM vendor we bought it from said it would work, but it didn't. And, one of the most critical ones is some of the apps that don't understand the process. will, for example, if you take a part number from Rev A to Rev B, and it automatically updates everything. And I've had users put their head down the table and go, automatic is bad. I just got this PPAP approved by the customer last Friday. Now it goes in and changes everything. And what it changed from an engineering standpoint makes sense, but it didn't change my PPAP at all. So, let humans decide. So, how complex does it have to be? How simple does it have to be? Again, this one's very interesting. I was presenting at a conference, and at the end of this presentation, I had a VP of quality come up to me and said, we spent over 5 years and $5 million trying to get 3 different PLM amps launched for PPAP, and they all failed. And he didn't understand it until he started thinking what we're talking about right now. And by the way, PLM apps are very good for what they're designed for. This is not anti-PLM, but they're very rigid on purpose. And the other thing that's important is system design, or product design, doing that work is not the same as manufacturing. The roles are different, very different. So if you think about this, people that are designing systems focus on the potential design failures. And yes, you should be using these tools to do this, but the people that are making parts are focused on potential process failures. It's a process FMEA, not a product FMEA. And in that case, 80% or higher of the markets are using spreadsheets. So again, design failures are a subject that design engineers do real well. Process failures is a different subject, a manufacturing process failure that, again, the MEs and the QEs do a good job at. So here's an unrealistic unrealistic and potentially damaging requirement. So I've got people say, well, does the DFMEA automatically feed the PFMEA? Because when we took the class, excuse me, that's what they told us to do. So I get a screen letter, a thing like this. I said, well, how do you want that to look? And they want the design FMEA to somehow, and artificial intelligence, I guess, is coming, but it's not here yet, somehow understand that the friction torque failure mode will be converted into failure torque resulting in increased power usage. And that's kind of combined by the effect. And, somehow these get matched up. Well, it doesn't work. And I've talked to companies said, well, the PLM vendor, that software does it, or the QMS vendor, whoever you're talking to, does it. And I said, well, that's interesting. How well does it do it? And when I say that, this gets back to ask the people how the process is working. Ask the people that execute the process. Ask the suppliers if they're coming in. And the bottom line is it doesn't work. It doesn't work well. And it doesn't work well because we use different vocabulary. Design engineers use different terms and thought than manufacturing engineers. So how do we do that? And this is an important issue because do we want the DFMEA to connect to the PFMEA? Yes. The only way I've seen that effectively work is with people, not the software, or you're working with your suppliers. That human interaction is a critical part of making that process work. And then I hear, well, but we already bought software to do this. Well, now we're going to get back to the executives a little bit, the oversight people that are looking at this. The majority of high-level executives that I've spoken with consider PPAP a project management thing that project managers do. And again, that's all right. But what I'm trying to emphasize on this slide is if you missed a deadline in the PPAP submission, that's a bummer. I mean, that's, no one wants to do that. But if you mess up the document authoring part, where we create the process flow, we create the PFEMA, we create the control plan, we do the gauge studies, you mess that up, now we're talking about bad recall or product recalls. Now we're talking about money. And, some people get frustrated with the gauge studies. It's like, well, all right, but, if you're willing to risk accepting good parts, this is where all the money starts to hit. So the easy part of the PPAP process is project management. The hard part is document authoring. So what's the risk look like? Simply uploading spreadsheets is a risk. I mean, Google problems with spreadsheets, you'll get all sorts of hits like this. 90% of spreadsheets have error in it. Number one problem I've heard, the frustration from the document authoring people, is they broke the links. John, we were out talking to the operator. We're looking at the control plan. I added information in there to clarify it. I had an operation to do something, but that operation didn't go back to the process flow. And, of course, for the people in the event today, you probably had this happen. That's the one the auditor finds. Actually, I was talking to a group of auditors last week, and they said the first place they go to look at for problems is exactly this subject. I'm going to pull out a control plan, show me the PFEMA, show me the process flow, and see if there's anything going on with it. Now, if we're just sticking in the spreadsheet for any one of those forms, there's sorting errors, cut and paste errors. Some people had some math they put into it. And what intrigues me when I talk to executives, this entire PPAP thing is about risk management, and it's a very critical business process. And I just look at them and say, why are you doing this in spreadsheets? You wouldn't do accounts payable or accounts receivable in spreadsheets. You don't do inventory management in spreadsheets. So we're managing risk with spreadsheets. Then I also have people say, well, we have supplier portals and project managers do this. Uploading files is better than nothing. And no, not really. Again, you can Google it. There's been lawsuits filed and won where suppliers have submitted PPAPs and the customer didn't look at them, and then they called with a problem and they argued with them. They said, look, we did this. The other challenge with this, by the way, real quick, is the majority of PPAP submissions get approved when they need the parts. They're sitting and receiving. We can't use them because the PPAP's not approved. So they call the engineer, usually, because he's the design engineer that goes in the PLM app. He may or may not be able to find it, depending where you put it. But whoever you call, if you need the parts, the PPAP gets approved with a click with very little review. That is a huge risk for your company. So the challenges, is this, so where does it belong? Do I put it in the ERP system? Do I put it in the PLM system? Do I put it in the QMS system? Well, that's the wrong question, because if you start with talking to your people, identifying the process, you'll get that answer. But you can't answer it until you talk to the people and look at the process. Well, our ERP already does this. Well, it usually does it for the project managers. Go to the document authoring persons. They do it in Excel and upload it, and that person executes it. I had another one where they were looking through, and the very, very good PLM app said, oh, yeah, we do all that, including document authoring. So, well, that's great. Let's look at it. And they look and said, okay, first you start with the design FEMA. And the people I was working with, would stop them and say, we don't do design FEMAs. And the demo kind of slowed down a little bit, and the person goes, well, just use the DFMEA you got from your customers. And they started laughing and go, we don't get DFMEAs from our customers. And again, if the logic is built in a highly engineered PLM app, that first you do designs and that feeds automatically the process, it already stops. Remember, the whole mantra of this is baby steps. I want something better than spreadsheets, but not too complex. And, this whole subject gets frustrating because it is confusing. Where does this thing go? And I've used this drawing a lot to explain to executives, we've already spent millions of dollars on software. Why do we need another one? I walk them through the subject and I go, if you look at the sequence of how these systems got computerized, the first thing we computerized was accounting. Makes sense. They approved the the appropriation request. But why did we do it? Because it took too long to get reports, and the report was full of errors. Boy, that sounds familiar. That sounds like people doing PPAP and spreadsheets. So if we go down one more level, and we're now trying to look at these PLM systems and these enterprise quality systems that are doing project management like they should, most of those are looking at the R&D tech center designing systems. But for some reason, when we get down to this PPAP document authoring process, and I'm talking about your plants, your suppliers making parts, their view is they design it, we build it. And the gap is doing the risk management in Excel, and the results, if you want to see how well you're doing, goes back to the failure costs, your recalls, your warranties, your defects. So again, both these systems at the top are very valuable and helpful. Robust PLM systems are fantastic. Enterprise quality systems are a given, a must. We've got to do that. So what works depends on who you are. If it's a system view, you can't do PLM in a spreadsheet. I mean, if you asked any engineer to do all the engineering work, managing the CAD drawings and keeping track of all that in spreadsheets, they'd just laugh at you. But then if it's a part view, doing that in PLM is pretty complicated. But there's a smiley space on our spreadsheets. Well, the spreadsheets frowns applies again to accounting, inventory, systems, and other, and that's why we bought database tools. The people that I've been working with, they start with, I love spreadsheets because I can do whatever I want. And then, oh, by the way, I hate spreadsheets because I got all these problems with it. Even down to rev control. I don't know what the current version is. I can't find it. I don't know where it is. So what would a solution that's better than spreadsheets but not too complex look like? Again, keep it simple. We're trying to get a better document authoring tool, not just the oversights and the project management. If possible, yes, we want to connect this to the ERP or PLM app. Provide a better tool than spreadsheets that help people do a better job creating the documents and helps you do a better job reviewing and approving the documents. Exporting characteristics from engineering documents is a great idea. It's a great next step. Don't have to do that on your first step. But this whole risk management thing is a company-wide process involving all departments. I've had people that I've been working with that said, well, we've got a router. So we already have the process flow. Well, a little bit, but I mean, if you look at the router, why was that created? Well, it's created because in the ERP app and for the accountants, we want to estimate, all the steps it's going to go through and the material they're going to need. And at the end of the operations, we're going to figure out, hey, I made 3 and do all the inventory and accounting stuff. But the process flow we're trying to get here, you could almost, and I have a lot of people do that, they don't start with the process flow, they start with the process FEMA. And then they work, to left and right to say, well, these are our risks, this is how we're making it, do I need to modify that at all? And some of the things you put in the process flow probably don't have to go in the router. So what do you mean? Well, again, the router is for how many did we make at what time, so I can do costing. So they're different forms. Now, I've seen companies combine them. I'm not saying you can't, but it's a different form. So projects. The smaller the company, the less project management needed. So what would a better than spreadsheets, but not too complex look like? Something like this, even something simple as spell checking. There's nothing more embarrassing for a quality professional to send a customer PPAP documents for review and it's got spelling errors in it. Now, again, Excel does spreadsheets. I'm sorry. Excel does spell checking, but you got to remember to run it. So for anyone that's used Amazon, any of the web apps, any of the tools, it should have real-time spell checking. Smart searches. This one's interesting because, it all depends on how you set up your K drive, all the folders that you're putting all this stuff in. By the way, design engineers set it up by part number because they're part number driven. The manufacturing or quality engineers may set it up by process. So whoever is the master one that started this, it doesn't work for everybody. So again, I'm looking for, I don't remember the name, there's a seed assembly. Type in and find it. Or even filtering. I want to see all the ones that are drafts, all the ones that are published. Or column sorting, things that people are used to seeing in spreadsheets and they like it. The ability to pin columns. In the spreadsheet, I can pin this, I can scroll left and right, I can see them all. Very useful feature, should be available. Hide columns, same idea. I don't want to see this when I'm working on this particular one, hide it. Or this one I find very interesting. I was just at an aerospace conference yesterday and talking about FEMAs and all that. When I was working with a group to come up with this solution, they looked at me and they said, either drop the right side of the FMEA, all the actions, improvement things, RPM reduction we're supposed to be doing, either get rid of it or give me a better way to manage it. And what I mean by that is, again, if I have 30 different PPAP submissions I'm working on, and all 30 of those FMEAs have something assigned to somebody, how do I track that? How do I know who it's assigned to? I mean, simple things like that. We've got to consolidate that and bring in a solution to do that. The other thing that is very interesting on these action items and the solution is, let's say there's a problem in your plant or maybe in receiving with a vendor. I've had a lot of quality engineers say, what would be really nice? It'd be really nice if I could see the process FEMA, because I want to ask the questions. Did we know about the risk and we missed it? It was in the PFEMA and we just missed it? Or did we not even know about the risk? Common sense. I mean, things that you learn in your training, things that you're exposed to. And I said, well, what do you mean? Why don't you do that? You go, we can't even find the spreadsheet. The other one is the ability to have configurable templates, configurable forms. The idea that, there are industry standard forms, but this customer tweaked this and this customer tweaked that, and they don't call it operations, they call it processes. That's all fine, but it can get confusing a couple ways. One, I had somebody tell me that, because John, I submitted a submission using the wrong customer form, which of course is bad. But he sent it to the competitor of a customer. So wouldn't it be nice if we could have one common format that we train our employees on, train our people on, and then when it gets to submit it, go ahead and change it over to the customer specific template. They can call it process. They don't have to call it operations. They can call it product requirements. They don't have to call it product characteristic. So that kind of flexibility is really important. The other one that's really interesting is the idea that As soon as you realize you're not in 3 different spreadsheets or different tabs in the same worksheet, however you're setting it up, that's in a database, wouldn't it be cool if I could see all the data in a single view, or what we refer to as a CTS view, the ability to put it all together? So something like that. And then also this one, do we have the ability to mark releases in here, snapshots of what's going on? Versus, again, a lot of the highly engineered apps say, well, we keep track of all the changes and all changes and who made them and what date and time. That is way too much information. If you went in and corrected a typo, it's going to tell you that, this is what changed on this date and time. So the ability, as you're going through this, we got together last week, we started the draft of it, we met again today, we made some changes to it, everybody in the room agreed, mark it as a release and publish it. This is another slide that I think is really important when it comes to understanding, and again, big and small companies, doesn't matter. I've had people just look at me and say PPAP is a quality thing. I've had supply chain people say that that's not my area. It doesn't impact me. Again, it's like, well, it impacts you as soon as the parts show up and they can't be used. So if you're having a hard time getting management's attention, John, I've sent all this out to them. They don't read my reports. They don't read my emails. I know this might be a little radical, but go out and talk to them. Ask them their opinion. Ask them for their ideas. Ask them for their help. And I mean cross-departmental. If you engage them, here's some of the conversations you can have. Legal. We got to protect the company. What I mean by that is product liability, warranty, all those issues impact us. And if we've got a poor system that's managing the risk, it's a risk to the company's brand. And for marketing, protect the brand. Everyone remembers this problem or this issue that happened with that, and it can have a significant financial impact on you. The finance guys, by the way, the finance guys have all the figure costs. So what we should be able to do is to look at the risk, look at the RPNs, and tie that out to a failure cost. Engineering, again, I'm pro PLM. It's a great tool for design engineering, and they've got a lot of the data we need. I mentioned characteristics coming in. Purchasing, critical. Define the supplier what your expectations are. I've had buyers tell suppliers, don't worry about it, just send in something, we'll approve it. And that's horrible. That back to legal, that is where we're going to get in a lawsuit, where we sent it in, you approved it, we said this is what we're doing, this is what it worked, and all those conversations are just crazy. In operations, those are the guys that are going to tell us if it's working or if it's not working. And quality, of course, we've got to look at compliance and how we're improving these things. But this is how we start talking about PPAP as a business process, not something that quality does. Supplier PPAP, I've talked to supply chain people and purchasing people. We want confidence in our suppliers. We want good parts on time. And if we've got a bad part, we want to review the PFMEA. So this is all about confidence in the suppliers and how they make things. Avoid use of unapproved parts in the production line. Avoid good parts sitting and receiving that we can't use because PPAP's not approved. We basically want to make it easier to detect issues early in the process, saving time and money. So again, this is about supplier PPAP, but it's the same thought that your customers use on you as their supplier. We want to hold the suppliers responsible for their ability to make the parts. In order to do that, these PPAP reviews have to be actual reviews versus just clicking on a page and approving them. Here's one that comes up a lot. Is workflow needed? So this slide is basically demonstrating the misunderstanding about what's going on regarding the process. Well, it's not that complicated. It's just PPAP. It's 18 things. You do this, this, and this. But if you go out and talk to the people and look at the process, you're going to find a relatively complex solution. And it should be simple, but often it's not. They say, well, John, our ERP app or PLM app, that has workflow. Project managers love workflow, but they're not doing the document authoring. That's the hard stuff. Remember, 80% has been focused on project management, 20% on authoring. But where we get the hits or we get the savings, let's be positive, that comes out of the authoring. And, sending the PLM app to a supplier making parts just makes them mad. So what do we need? Baby steps. What would be nice is asking a human what they do and what the computer should do. So how about just something like, here's all the steps, and we want to publish this, and I want to include these particular documents in the submission. And by the way, here's how it comes up. My first time I tried to do a flow chart of a PPAP process, I asked one person in the room, we went through and did it. And I went to the second person in the room, and they said, no, we don't do it that way. We actually have different ways depending on what the customer wants. Some customers want full submissions. Some people want partial submissions. Then we're not going to bring it up the whole resubmission process. And they said, it would be cool if I could just go in and say, this is what I want to publish. Send me out the PDF files that I can put in the project management tool that I want. Again, baby steps. Give me something better than spreadsheets to do document authoring. Remember what they told me. If it's too complicated, I'm going back to spreadsheets. They said, well, look, if I can just do that, oh, wait a minute, there's one other screen I want. I want one place to go in. And, I work on 5 different PPAP submissions with various people. If I can have one place I can go in and say, these are all the tasks that are assigned to you across, doesn't matter who the customer is, doesn't matter who the part number is. That would be nice, especially if I can sort it by due date. That would be nice. And then remember bringing the right side of the PFMEA and DFMEA to life. If there are things in an FMEA, again, I don't know what part number, I don't know what customer, just bring them all out of these into a common database. That would be extremely helpful. Things like that. Just with a single click of the mouse, I can see what I have to work on. So what would an integrated supplier PPAP look like? Something like this. Here's what the process flow usually is. A purchase order number drives a PPAP request. And again, it's part number and revision level driven. Engineering provides the part data. Supplier completes the submission and sends them. And again, we do a document review, whether it's full, partial, or resubmit, however you want to do that. One of the things is that supplier PPAP can and should include an effort before the purchase order. And what I mean by that is if you start adopting the idea of process families and product families, you kind of already have some, unless it's a totally unique part that you've never done before, and that happens. But if it's similar to what you've done, you can get away with this family data. Bulk material people, special processes, NDT, heat treat, all those things can be done and created in such a way that it's done. And the companies that are adopting that has made PPAP, when they're doing it before a purchase order, they use it as a sales tool. And this is a big shift from the mentality that says, well, it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you more. If you want me to do all this, it's going to cost you more. But again, if you talk to the people about what they're doing, we already do all this. Walk up to any manufacturing engineer, any operator, and say, tell me about your process. Tell me what the risks are and tell me how you manage those risks. They'll tell you. So this is a very important thought about proactively doing it. So what we're looking for then is something in between. Remember that gap about I've got ERP, PLMM, I've got QMS, some other stuff. What we want is just a simple way to connect it, integrate it as needed, based on what your people explain about their processes. So the recommended solution is a baby step. Get out of spreadsheets and into a database. And, even on this one, people that don't want to do anything, it's too hard. Spreadsheets are so easy. We've always used spreadsheets. There's not enough data here to warrant a database. I've seen some very big FMEAs, and I'm talking about 50,000 line items. I had a person sitting next to me at lunch yesterday saying, oh, yeah, we're using spreadsheets, but boys, it's slow to open up those files. The other one, cybersecurity, doing any, Department of Defense, any proprietary stuff, the security on a simple database is far beyond better than emailing spreadsheets or walking around with USB sticks. Reporting and analytics capability. Now, at this point, I'm envisioning we've gotten off spreadsheets, we're going into a database. This is the oversight stuff that people would like. Hey, regardless of the customer, regardless of the part number, or same subject with your suppliers, what are the top 10 issues that we're seeing across all of them? Oh, geez, it really seems like the milling operation is coming up on all of them. What actions are we taking on the top 10 issues? Are they adequate? Are they working? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? And again, that one click that says, what do I have to work on, and sorting it by due date. And then the idea of just RPN analysis. This is interesting. For this customer part number, we put an RPN at 80, but the same process, different part number, we had it at 150. And same characteristics. All of that can be done when I move from a spreadsheet to a database. And on these, by the way, again, accounting needs to be your best friend. Ask them for help. Ask them to tie dollars to it. So how do you get your project funded? If you want to do this, get off spreadsheets. Again, go to finance or accounting, get them involved. Start talking to them about failure costs. See what data they have. Explain to them how what we're trying to do is to communicate across the organization that these are the process risks and this is how we're going to manage them. Go up to operations and ask them about delays from shipping due to PPAP not being approved. By the way, that I said shipping here. It can be receiving from parts you're buying, and it can be in shipping. I can't get it out to the customer because the customer hasn't approved it yet. Get engineering to engage about the new product introduction and purchasing with the purchase parts. And again, I didn't go through a lot of detail on this, but if you Google how lean PPAP is, you're going to see a lot of information about it's a mess. So the recommended solution is basically go through and solve the document authoring process. Get it database driven, improve your security and audit trail, and get some reporting and analytics capability that has never been possible with spreadsheets. So we do have some time for some questions. Let's see if we got any in here. By the way, there's going to be a demo of a database solution on March 28th and March 30th. If you're interested, you go to HGINT at webinars events. So let's see if we have any questions. All right, this one really isn't a question, it's just more of a comment. They said, we are changing suppliers very quickly due to COVID. A lot of things coming back onshore. A tool like this would make my life so easy. Another comment about my customers all have different forms. How do I support that? That gets back into the form template that allows you to set up and manage things as one system, common internal, and then toggle when you're looking to submit. This one says, I'm one of the guys that the software vendor told our management that what we bought does PPAP, but it does not. Help me. Now what? Back to the beginning of this conversation. Go out and document the actual process. Ask accounting to help quantify the cost and failure costs. Get the actual process flow. How do we create? How do we submit? All the way to approval. And also, one of the other things I'd highly advise you on, don't try to compete with or be negative about the money already spent on software. Don't badmouth them. Don't make it do. I mean, you're not trying to tell management that we spent money, it was a waste of money. You're trying to help document authoring. And you want to work with the PLM or project management, whatever tools you do, and then explain and get your software sales rep involved. They need to be on your side. Otherwise, it gets very complicated. This one is commenting on, I've seen other apps that will let me upload my old spreadsheets. I think that's important. And I want to be correct in how I answer it, because to be blunt, I don't think it's important. The reason is we're moving from spreadsheets because we have bad data, columns moved, things moved around. We know it's a mess. So what you're asking me, is it okay to import a mess? And the answer is no. Well, then the follow-on question I'm anticipating would be, oh, no, they're not a mess. They're really good. We just want to upload them in the database. And it takes too much time to reload them. Well, from personal experience and talking with hundreds of people on this subject, the majority of people I talked to have told me, I uploaded the old spreadsheet, and to clean it up, because now the database saying this is missing, that's not here, this is wrong. He said by the time I fixed what was uploaded, if I had a product and process library capability, I could rebuild one from scratch faster than uploading. And that's kind of a blunt, brutal answer. But if you want to talk about that, give me a call after the event today. Oh, this is an interesting one. We are right now looking at software for supplier PPAP. Are you saying we need to get suppliers involved in the selection process? Absolutely, yes. Again, hold on. I shouldn't say absolutely yes. If you're just asking them to send you spreadsheet files and you're going to upload them into your portal or into a project management tool, then no, I guess they really don't have to. But if you're really looking to improve supplier quality, to reduce defects, you probably should have a conversation with them, because they're going through all the same problems and frustrations you're having. And you don't have to do all of them, but pick, actually, here's probably the best thing to do. Pick your best supplier and your worst supplier and talk to them about it. Here's one that's saying all the solutions they've looked at have all been cloud-based, and based on their customers' proprietary knowledge, we can't go into the cloud. Can it be, can you still do it on premise? You need to get a solution that meets your need. If you have restrictions about cloud usage, yes, you need a vendor that can provide you a solution that does that. Oh, here's a good one. I don't think I talked about this. Can you develop custom APQP or PPAP lists? Yes, of course. The solution, project management, is not going to go away. And this customer has 18 tasks. This customer has 22 tasks. Yeah, you need the flexibility to do that. All right, we got one more. I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit. It says you talked about auditors looking at spreadsheets and finding errors. And basically what they're asking is, how do you improve that? Well, here's one for you. In the automotive sector, that are kind of the people other sectors look at to say, well, how do they do APQP and PPAP? The IATF audits had 400 major and 6,000 minor findings on control plans. And when I first saw that, I go, how could that be? We've been doing this forever. Well, it was mostly caused by non-integrated spreadsheet errors. You know, the oops. I put it in the PFMEA, I forgot to update the control plan, or the other way around. All right. One last thing about the Harrington Group. The Harrington Group is enterprise quality management system and cloud app provider and on-premise provider that is focused on operational improvements. The whole essence of this conversation. Doing PPAP for the sake of PPAP does not improve, nor does it help your long-term financial results. The focus is cost-effective quality software tools that evolves as your business grows. We've been around since 1991 with over 45,000 customers looking at software to buy it. We're happy to help, would love to talk to you about it, and thank you so much for attending today's event.